I've never really laid out the full story for anyone. Not my friends, not my family, not even the people who were there with me. A few people know something happened, but I've always kept it vague. Part of it is because I didn't know how to explain it, and part of it is because I figured no one would take it seriously. When something like this happens to a guy, the reaction is different. People either downplay it, or they get uncomfortable and change the subject. So I've just kept it to myself. It still affects me. I don't go to parties unless I know exactly who's there. I won't drink anything unless I open it myself. I keep track of where my phone is, and I try to stay aware of every exit. I know it sounds dramatic, but once something like this happens to you, it stops feeling paranoid. It just becomes how you move through the world. But enough with the sob story. This happened last spring. I'm 23 now, so I was 22 at the time. I went down to Wilmington with two guys I went to college with, DJ and Marcus. We rented a place near the water for the week. It wasn't anything crazy, but it had a decent back patio and we could walk to the beach, which was all we really cared about. We weren't planning on getting wild, mostly just wanted to hang out, maybe meet some people, have a few nights out. That was it. On our second night, DJ matched with a girl on Tinder, who mentioned a party happening on a quieter stretch of beach past Wrightsville. She said it was mostly locals and a few students, not a big event, just one of those word-of-mouth things. It sounded relaxed, not like a rowdy crowd, and she sent him a location pin with a message to swing by after 10. We showed up around 10:30, and the setup actually looked pretty nice. The beach backed up into these dunes with no houses nearby, so it felt tucked away. They had string lights running between stakes, a couple of Bluetooth speakers near a decent-sized bonfire, and lanterns planted around the sand. People were scattered in groups, some dancing, some sitting around smoking, others taking photos closer to the fire or down by the water. The crowd was mostly people our age, a lot of girls, and everyone seemed like they were already a few drinks in. A few minutes after we arrived, a girl walked up to me and struck up a conversation. She was probably a few inches shorter than me, blonde, wearing a red bikini with a mesh wrap. She came off confident and friendly, kind of flirty, but casual about it, and asked if I wanted something to drink. I told her sure, and she said she'd get one from the table near the dunes, so I followed her. At the table, I saw two big coolers and a few pitchers already being poured into red Solo cups. There weren't any cans or bottles visible, just those pitchers, which they were clearly using for everyone's drinks. She handed me a cup filled with something that tasted like fruit punch spiked with vodka. It was super sweet, like it was hiding how strong it actually was, and it had that sharp vodka aftertaste that hits you a few seconds later. I figured it was just one of those pre-mixed setups that gets you buzzed faster than you expect. After a few sips, I started to feel it hitting quicker than I thought it would. My arms felt kind of heavy, and when I tried to talk to Marcus, I noticed I was slurring a little more than I should have been. The music sounded muffled, almost like it wasn't playing as loud as it had been, but I chalked it up to the drink kicking in fast after a long day in the sun. Then things started to blur. I'd blink and find myself in a different spot. One moment I was near the fire, and the next I was on the sand, sitting with three girls I didn't recognize. One of them was running her fingers through my hair, and another was trying to hand me something, some kind of gummy. She told me it would help even me out. I tried to refuse, but I couldn't speak clearly, and even when I shook my head, it felt delayed. From there, everything comes in fragments. I remember lying on my back and watching the fire twist in the sky. I heard someone laughing, but it was like my brain couldn't understand why. I felt hands reaching into my pockets. One of them kissed the side of my face and whispered something like, "He's barely even here." When I came to, I was in the back of a car I didn't recognize. It was parked somewhere sketchy, crooked, like it had just pulled in and stopped, next to a row of trash bins. My belt was undone. My shoes were missing. My phone and wallet were gone. One of the girls from earlier leaned into the open door. Her voice was calm, like nothing had happened. She said, "You're fine. Don't ruin it." Like I was inconveniencing them by waking up. I have no idea how I managed to get out, but I pushed myself out of the car and stumbled down the street until I found a gas station. I must have looked messed up because the guy at the register immediately called 911. I could barely talk. I remember him asking me questions, and I couldn't even form full answers. The EMTs showed up and took me to the ER. They hooked me up to fluids and gave me something to flush whatever was in my system. I asked what it was, but the nurse wouldn't give me specifics. Just said it wasn't alcohol, and I was lucky I'd gotten help when I did. I filed a police report the next day, but there wasn't much to give them. The beach wasn't monitored. The pin DJ got was just a vague drop location. The number the girl gave him was already disconnected by morning, and her Snapchat was either deleted or never really hers to begin with. DJ got hit too. He passed out on one of the beach chairs and woke up without his wallet. Marcus never made it onto the beach. He said the vibe felt off as soon as we pulled up, so he turned around and got an Uber back. I gave him shit about it at the time. I don't anymore. It's hard to explain how much something like that messes with your head. What I keep going back to is how casual they were. They weren't scrambling, no panic. Just calm and routine, like it wasn't their first time doing it and probably wouldn't be their last. I'm not telling this for sympathy. I'm telling it because most people don't think stuff like this happens to guys. And that's exactly why it keeps happening. It's not just some club in a city. It's at a beach, under lights, in a place that feels safe, with people who smile and act friendly and offer you a drink like it's no big deal. So if you're ever at a party and something feels even a little bit off, don't wait around trying to figure it out. Just leave. I wish I had. I hadn't originally planned to stay on campus for spring break. The idea was to head down to Atlanta and stay with a friend for the week, but her schedule shifted at the last minute, and my backup options either cost too much or didn't make sense logistically. So I stayed. In a weird way, I was actually okay with it. I'd been following this fitness guy on Instagram, some ex-D1 athlete who posts detailed workout splits, meal preps, and morning routines. And watching his stuff had me thinking about tightening up my own schedule. Spring break with an empty campus felt like the perfect opportunity. No social distractions, no back-to-back classes, just time and space to finally get into a rhythm. I figured I'd hit the gym regularly, eat clean for a week, maybe get ahead on some assignments, and keep things low-key. Most people had cleared out by Saturday. The campus got eerily quiet fast. No crowds on the sidewalks, barely anyone in the dining halls, and the campus buses were running on a reduced schedule. The only people left seemed to be international students, a few student athletes, and random stragglers like me. I lived in one of the older dorms on the east side of campus. It was the basic setup, 2 beds, a shared kitchenette, and no real privacy. My roommate, Ethan, was someone I barely knew. We were both juniors, but he was in a different program, something in physics. He mostly kept to himself. A little socially awkward, maybe. But he never gave me any real reason to feel uncomfortable. Just a quiet guy who preferred staying in and keeping his head down. I assumed he'd be gone for break, too. So, when I walked into the room Saturday afternoon and saw his backpack still slumped on the chair and his coat hanging on the hook, I was a little surprised. I asked him casually if he was staying, and he just nodded without offering anything else. He didn't ask why I was there, and I didn't press it. The first couple of days weren't bad. We barely interacted. He stayed on his side of the room with his headphones on, mostly hunched over his laptop. He wasn't loud or intrusive. He didn't go out much, but I figured that was just his normal routine. When he did leave, it was always late. Sometimes well past midnight. I'd hear the door open and close, but never any voices, and I never saw anyone come back with him. By Monday, I started noticing little things that made me feel uneasy. I woke up that morning and realized my phone charger was missing. I always kept it plugged in next to my bed. Same exact spot every night. But it was gone. I asked if he'd seen it, and he gave a flat no, without even turning around. Later that night, I opened my drawer to grab some ibuprofen and noticed the bottle was nearly empty, even though I'd just refilled it 2 weeks earlier. At first, I tried to convince myself I was overthinking things. Maybe I'd moved the charger and forgot. Maybe I'd taken more painkillers than I thought. But over the next 2 days, more things started to feel off. My deodorant felt damp, like someone had just used it. My toothbrush was at a different angle than I'd left it. Nothing huge, but just enough to register in the back of my head. By Wednesday, I was paying close attention. I started taking photos of how I left my stuff before leaving the room. Nothing obsessive, just quick shots of my drawer, my bag, where I left my keys. Every time I came back, something would be slightly different. My backpack looked rummaged through. My laptop cable was slightly uncoiled. Even the small bottle of cologne I kept on my dresser was turned a different way. Then came Thursday night. I woke up around 3 a.m. with this heavy feeling, like I wasn't alone. When I opened my eyes, I saw Ethan sitting at his desk, but not working. He wasn't facing his laptop or doing anything. He was just sitting there, completely still, staring in my direction. His screen was black. There was no music playing, nothing else moving. I sat up and asked, "Dude, what are you doing?" He didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge me at all. After a few seconds, he slowly turned back to his laptop, powered the screen on, and acted like he hadn't just been watching me sleep for who knows how long. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, I locked my valuables inside my backpack and started taking it with me everywhere, even to the bathroom. I downloaded a motion-activated camera app on my old phone and positioned it on my desk to record anything that happened while I was asleep. The next morning, I checked the footage. There were 3 clips, all triggered between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. The first 2 showed Ethan pacing quietly, back and forth between the closet and his bed. But the third one was worse. It showed him slowly, walking over to where I was sleeping, standing next to my bed, and just watching. For nearly 5 minutes, he didn't move. He didn't touch anything. He just stood there, silent. That was it for me. I packed a bag and left the room later that morning. I didn't even wait for Ethan to leave. I went straight to the RA's office and told them I needed to stay somewhere else. I didn't even have a backup plan. I just knew I wasn't spending another night in that room. I called an old classmate who lived a few miles off campus and asked if I could sleep on their couch for the weekend. Thankfully, they said yes. The following day, I filed an incident report with the housing office and showed them the video. They didn't question it. Within a week, they moved me into a different dorm across campus. The part that stuck with me the most came when I went back one last time to grab the rest of my stuff. Ethan was there when I walked in. He didn't say anything at first, just sat on his bed watching me quietly as I packed my last bag. As I zipped it up, he looked at me and said with this strange calmness, "I didn't think you'd notice." That was the last thing he ever said to me. A few weeks later, I heard he withdrew from the semester. I never found out why. I never asked anyone, and no one ever brought it up again. Honestly, I was just glad to be out of that room and away from whatever that situation was turning into. Since then, I've never stayed on campus during a break. No matter how empty my calendar looks, I always find somewhere else to be. I didn't even want to go on the trip at first. It was spring break, and my 2 buddies had been hyping up this camping spot one of them found up near a national forest area. I'll leave their real names out, just in case, so let's call them Mike and Sean. We were all in our mid-20s, and Mike was the outdoorsy one. He had all this insane gear, a tent that basically popped itself up, a foldable stove, water filters, even bear spray. The guy treated camping like a second profession. The drive took us about 4 hours, mostly back roads and winding Forest Service routes. When we pulled into the trailhead lot, there was just one other vehicle, a dusty old Ford Ute parked off to the side. We figured we might run into another group out there, but it didn't seem like a big deal. We hiked in about 1.5 miles to a clearing Mike had scouted online. It really was perfect. Flat ground, trees forming a natural perimeter, and a river close enough that you could hear it, but not so close it kept you up. We set up camp, got dinner going, cracked some beers, and lit a joint while Mike fussed with his fire setup like it was a competition. Around 9:30, Sean said he was going to grab more wood so we wouldn't have to later. He had a headlamp on and disappeared just past where the firelight started thinning into the trees. It was one of those super still nights where sound carries weird, and after about 10 minutes, Mike and I both kind of glanced at each other. No noise, no footsteps, just the fire crackling. 15 minutes passed, still no Sean. We stood up and called his name a few times, but before we could decide whether to go after him, we saw movement. 2 men stepped out from the woods into the glow of our fire. They were both laughing, soft, friendly chuckles like they'd just shared a joke, and they gave us a nod as they walked into the clearing. "Evening, fellas," one of them said. "Mind if we sit for a minute?" I think the beer made the decision for us, because we both just shrugged and said sure. They sat down on the other side of the fire, right across from us. One guy was probably in his 40s, lean with a scruffy face and a tired look. The other was bulkier, younger, maybe late 30s. Wore a dark hoodie and a trucker hat. They were chatty. Asked us how long we'd been out there, how we found the spot, if we'd come up the ridge or along the river. They even joked about how quiet it was for spring break. It all seemed casual enough, just backwoods camper talk. But something about the way they asked, the way they kept glancing at each other between questions, put me on edge. That's when Mike nudged me and gave me this subtle, stiff elbow to the ribs. I looked over at him and saw he was staring dead ahead at the man in the hat. "Is that?" he murmured. I followed his eyes. The guy across the fire was wearing Sean's hat. Same color, same torn mesh on the back. It was unmistakable. Trying to cover the realization, Mike forced a smile and asked, "So, you guys been out here long?" The older one scratched his beard and said, "Not far, just bouncing around a bit." Mike nodded. "Yeah? You hike in from the riverside or ridge?" The bulkier one looked confused for a second, like he didn't understand the question. Then he muttered something about moving through different sites. I felt the back of my neck go cold. The small talk had shifted. Their timing was off. Their tone was weird, like they were reciting lines they'd half memorized, and they didn't ask anything about Sean. After a while, maybe 20 minutes, they stood up, thanked us for the company, and said they were heading back. They melted back into the dark like they'd never been there. 10 minutes later, Sean came stumbling out of the woods. He was frantic, covered in dirt and leaves. "We have to go. Now." Mike stepped forward, confused. "Wait, hang on. Sean, there were 2 guys here, right here by the fire. One of them had your hat." Sean's face drained. "What? They were here? Jesus, we need to leave now." We didn't waste another second. We started cramming everything into our packs. No folding, no sorting. Just stuff and zip. Mike even dumped water on the fire with his cooking pot, muttering that it didn't matter. As we jogged the trail back to the lot, Sean told us what happened. "I was maybe 50 feet off the trail when I saw a light coming through the trees. At first, I thought it was one of you guys. Then the light started jerking around, like someone was sprinting, right at me. I dropped the wood and ran. I think I lost my hat crashing through some branches. I dove under this fallen log and stayed still." He paused, out of breath just from retelling it. The light caught up. It stopped right near me. Then I heard footsteps. 2 people. And I heard a gun. I heard it cock. By the time we reached the trailhead, we were all breathing hard. The forest felt like it was pressing in. We stepped into the lot and froze. The front tires on Mike's truck were completely flat. Clean cuts across the sidewalls on both front tires. Mike let out a string of curses. God damn it. This is new. It's not even a year old. Screw the wheels, Sean said. We're getting out of here. We jumped into Mike's truck anyway. He hesitated, staring at the dash, the flat warnings blinking. But something in Sean's urgency must have clicked, because he threw it in gear and drove. Tires screeched and wobbled, grinding against the asphalt and dirt as we tore down the forest road at maybe 20 miles an hour. It felt like we were crawling, but we didn't care. The lights in the rear view stayed empty, but we didn't relax until we hit a gas station 20 miles out. We didn't report it that night. Didn't go to a ranger station or call the sheriff. I don't know why. Maybe we didn't want to believe what almost happened. Maybe we didn't want to explain how some stranger ended up wearing our friend's hat. But we never went back. And none of us camp anymore.